Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 616. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. Do you guys want to know something interesting I just learned?
I want to know something interesting you just learned.
Yeah, I don't think either of you guys know this, so I'm going to share it with you. Scholars believe that 666 is actually a mistranslation, and 616 is the number of the beast. What do you guys think about that?
I've heard that.
You've heard that before.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Other than when Zach said it before we hit record.
Oh, that's where I heard it from. Okay.
Right. This is how things usually go. Zach gives Kyle a fun fact and then he claims it as his own.
Yeah, that's got me pretty far in life so far.
Sure. Welcome to the podcast, guys. Episode 616.
The number of the beast.
The number of the beast, according to scholars. According to pop culture, not yet. We've got a good, 40 some odd episodes left? 40 some odd?
Wow. Quick math there, James. Very impressive.
I'm not a mathematician, clearly.
Okay.
50, I would say exactly.
50 exactly?
So
Oh, yeah.
It
would be 50 exactly. 50, 40 some odd. They're pretty close.
If only there was the exact even number to get us there. It'd be so much easier.
I know. What can I say?
It's tricky.
In this episode, we're going to discuss a movie titled Poor Things, which is in theaters now. We're also going to talk the Netflix movie Maestro, amongst other things. How was y'all's New Year? Are the lights still on? We've been getting tons of emails about lights.
This is a lightning rod topic, and I would say overall pro Kyle topic too from the emails and the comments we've been getting on the lights.
Overwhelmingly pro Kyle.
Right. So I feel quite vindicated. I'm pushing through till at least Valentine's Day now. Martin Luther King can eat my dust for keeping these lights on into February.
I mean, they are pro Kyle, but most of them are pro Kyle because those people are also lazy, right? That's generally what the emails are like. They're like, I don't feel like taking it down, so I agree with Kyle.
Or they live in cold climates.
Sure.
Right.
But I'm sure there's people in those areas that are looking around saying, what's up with this guy with his lights still out? Doesn't he know the rules?
Well, okay. So I'm going to say I was out walking the dog before the podcast tonight, and because it's winter, it gets dark at like 4:30. And half my neighbors, or half the people that had their lights up during Christmas, still have them turned on. Okay. So I am still within the average. Mm-hmm. The average person on my block who had their lights still has it on. Now, I'm sure over the next couple of days, that's going to dwindle and I may become the lone holdout, but I do not feel like an outlier compared to the immediate houses around me. You go down the block a ways and like there's no lights on whatsoever. And I would feel out of place in that portion. But in my little area, we're still going strong.
Now, I will say that you have created a subsector of a category in order to place yourself in the majority. So like, not all the houses on your street even have lights to begin with, right? So they're already in the bah humbug group.
Right. But then so I don't count them.
Well, but they're counted as far as like people's opinions about lights.
Well,
then we have the category.
Maybe they don't celebrate Christmas. They could be celebrate other right. So there's just they just don't put lights up. So I can't say they're anti-lights because I don't know why they don't put lights up.
Well, they're anti-Christmas lights. How about that? Then of the category people with Christmas lights, half of them don't have them on anymore.
Correct.
You claimed that you're still in the average when you're in the half that doesn't. So that's not average. That's the half that doesn't.
No, I'm saying of people that had Christmas lights,
which half of them I think have them off.
You're right. And half of them have it on. I think it is fair to say like of Americans that do X, half do this. And that is a fair statistic. No one's like, oh, the 3/4 of Americans don't do it at all. Like, well, no, we're talking about Americans who do this also have this behavior. So I'm saying of people who have behavior A, 50% still do behavior A.
But you also made the phrase that like around the corner in another part of the neighborhood, nobody has their lights on. So it kind of sounds to me like you and your other buddies in your neighborhood have decided to keep your lights on.
A little support group.
So that you're right, like a little lighting support group, Christmas light support group. Like you're all playing chicken with each other to see who turns them off first.
Right. We haven't discussed this at all. It's not like I went around to them and said, hey, I got to prove some podcast listeners something. Can you leave your lights on? Like they just haven't turned them off yet. So.
Okay.
It will be interesting to see who the last person is. It could be me. I have a cutoff dates. It could be someone else. So we're going to see what happens.
I will say I was inspired. I normally, the day after New Year's Eve, like on New Year's Day, I shut them off. Even if I don't take them down, I shut them off. And then like, I'll take them down over the course of the next couple of days. This week, I was like, I'm going to pull a Kyle here. I'm going to leave him up. I'm going to let him go for a week.
Yeah.
That's what I did. And as of this Saturday, I was like, I can't stand it anymore. These are coming down. I can't do it. I don't have the fortitude, I think, to just be like, screw you all. I'm leaving them on.
All right. So I have two questions for you.
Sure.
Number one, did other people have their lights up or were you the only person who had your lights up?
I was not the only person. However, I was the minority that still had them on.
Okay, so right, there definitely is the peer pressure aspect of it. If you're trying something new, I get it. Before Saturday, were you enjoying having them still on?
No.
Okay.
Who enjoys lights after New Year's? There's no point. The point is holiday season, be festive. After New Year's, that's over. It's like walking into a store after New Year's and they've still got all their Christmas stuff up. Does that happen? No.
I mean, at a deep discount, yes.
Well, I'm talking about their decorations, not what they're selling.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, I don't think we can use capitalism as a fair measure because they moved on to whatever Valentine's Day already. There is no non-holiday season anymore if you are a retailer. Every season is a holiday season.
I was inspired by our conversation, so I actually put more lights up.
Oh,
so
good.
I'll be putting more lights up
New
over
Year's?
the course. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just keep adding to it and see where it goes.
Zach, I really hope you did not have any like inflatables up, and then after New Year's you put inflatable Santa up and like inflatable reindeer, and just like now I'm ready.
I'm not
for
a fan of
stuff.
inflatables. They're so popular down here, but I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of inflatables either.
No offense to anybody who has inflatables, but it's maybe the laziest Christmas decoration ever to be devised.
They're also super expensive.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like a small reindeer is like $50, and then if you're talking like those large inflatables, you could be looking at hundreds of dollars for those.
I will say there is a tradition in Florida. It probably is not the same up north for New Year's Eve, which is pretty wild, and I look forward to it every year. It's the fireworks. So every New Year's Eve, people shoot off fireworks in all directions everywhere.
Okay.
It's there's maybe 30 different fireworks going off at any given second all around you for a half an hour. And it's pandemonium and it's pretty awesome.
I thought you were going to say the shooting of the firearms, not the fireworks.
No, fireworks. Just like fireworks everywhere. It's yeah.
And like big and small, like you can just hear normal fireworks. And also people are like launching like $20, launch.
Like you look
fireworks.
in any direction and you'll see like one of the big plumes that's 100 feet up.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And these aren't like public fireworks shows. These are just people who are launching fireworks in their backyard.
Yes.
It's been explained to me that that's maybe a Spanish thing.
I think I've heard that as well, that's like a bigger thing. And I live in a more Latino part of the city, but it's just, there's no other experience like it. I've never experienced something like it before. And it's every New Year's and every 4th of July. And then someone always on like Facebook is complaining about the noise and they're like, think of the dogs.
Absolutely. I used to think it was kind of cool too until I got a dog that hates it. And on top of that, it doesn't really end New Year's Eve, at least not in my neighborhood. Like I hear it into the 2nd and the 3rd.
Really?
Totally. But on New Year's Eve for about an hour,
those
it's
people
constant.
to keep the holiday season going.
Right. Yeah.
Constant.
Yeah. It's a lot of people in like a concentrated moment New Year's Eve, and then I think the second and the third are like kids that just have some leftover.
Sure.
And they want to light them. But yeah, it sends my dog into a moral crisis, I think. Or I don't know if it's a moral crisis, but I don't know what you'd call it. But yeah, nervous breakdown. Speaking of nervous breakdowns, we need to remind you guys there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go to YouTube, youtube.com/@Cinereelists. Check us out there. Also, you can watch while you listen by subscribing at the YouTube channel. You could also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate that. 5 stars only. Or you could send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com, REEL with an S on the end. Send a comment, a question, a list suggestion, all those kinds of things. Or you could send us your top 10 of 2023 list. That's kind of our ongoing in the moment effort. If you're going to do anything that we've ever asked you to do, please just let it be sending in your top 10 list of 2023 or your top 20 or your top 50. We don't care. Just as long as you get those top 10 to us, we'd appreciate that. The reason why you should do that is because for every year we do a hangover episode, and a part of that episode is the listeners coming together, submitting their top 10 lists. Then we collate, aggregate, congregate those lists into an aggregate list. Zach does some kind of wild math, subtracts 16 from 50 and comes up with an aggregate listener top 10 list. So if you want to get in on that, if you want to have your voice heard on that list, heyguys@cinereelists.com. Also, you could support us on our Patreon, patreon.com/cinereelists. If you do that, you'll get extra after show audio and you'll be supporting the show, which we appreciate. All right, you guys ready to talk some movies? Enough about Christmas lights. The second episode in a row, we've talked a lot about Christmas lights.
Oh, and you know there's going to be more in the next episode, too. This is an ongoing saga.
I've got Christmas lights right here. See? Look.
I don't see them.
I see maybe fake garland.
Well, yeah, fake garland with Christmas lights on them.
They're on?
They're not on.
Oh, they're
not
on? Oh, okay. Well, then.
Is a light really a light when it's not on?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a light. It's not a light source at the moment.
Okay.
Like you go to the store to buy a light and they're like, we don't have any lights. They're all off.
They're all off.
Sure.
We're all fresh out. We got these balls of glass. If you want one of those, maybe that'll work. But
I mean, yeah, I can't wait to get into these reviews so we can debate, I don't know, what makes a musical instrument and what makes not a musical instrument. Or I don't know what kind of conversation we're going to get into. But first off, we're going to talk Poor Things. Now, Zach is going to drop off for Poor Things because he hasn't seen it yet, but we will pick him back up when we get to Maestro. Poor Things is in theaters now. We're going to talk about it right after this clip.
These two are fighting and ideas are banging around in Bella's head and heart like lights in a storm.
Oh. You're always reading now, Bella. You're losing some of your adorable way of speaking.
I'm a changeable feast, as are all of we. Apparently, according to Emerson, disagreed with by Harry.
Come, just come.
You were in my son.
What?
That was Poor Things, a 2023 science fantasy black comedy directed by Yorgos Lanthimos and written by Tony McNamara. Poor Things stars Emma Stone, Mark Ruffalo, Willem Dafoe, Rami Youssef, and Christopher Abbott, and Jared Carmichael, amongst others.
Mm-hmm.
And the official IMDb plot synopsis for Poor Things is: the incredible tale about the fantastical evolution of Bella Baxter, a young woman brought back to life by the brilliant and unorthodox scientist, Dr. Godwin Baxter.
I'd say that's a pretty fair synopsis of the movie. Like, just not about what it's about, but definitely about what happens, the basic premise.
Sure. I mean, it is about the fantastical evolution of Bella Baxter.
Right, but it definitely it focuses very much on one aspect of her evolution is a big part of the movie.
Right. Yeah, we should probably have talked about this before we
really
started in on this.
Yes.
What are we going to say about Bella? Just what the plot synopsis says, that she was brought back to life?
I don't think we need to talk about her past.
Okay.
Not that the movie hides it from you, but I think that's a bit of a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
So I may talk a little bit about what happens towards the end, but in more general terms.
Okay.
Sure. And I think we should also just mention, like Saltburn, we are, even though we're a family-friendly podcast, and I promise this time, Scout's Honor, I will use family-friendly words. Some of the topics may not be as family-friendly on this review.
Sure. We're going to dance around some stuff. You're going to have to read into it, is what we're saying.
Exactly. Yep. We won't be explicit.
Right.
I won't be explicit.
Sounds good.
I mean, we don't have a Zach here right now to censor me, so I guess
to wrangle us.
I can say whatever I want, but
no worries. Okay. So yeah, Poor Things. I mean, we should also say it's a Yorgos Lanthimos film. So if you've seen any other Yorgos Lanthimos film, then you know that he does things a little differently, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that means like some relatively extreme takes on topics, even though visually he is very playful with it instead of being disgusting with it, I would say. It's kind of his gift, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we can say that there is a lot of depictions of sex in this movie, but it's not a steamy movie.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's like very much like a 5-year-old boy's perception of these topics, I would say.
Maybe like an 8-year-old.
Maybe an 8-year-old, whatever. One that understands roughly the machinations of what's going on, but doesn't understand it anything past that.
Yeah.
So
like this is definitely an R-rated movie, but it's not like a hardcore film or anything like that.
Right. So to set it up, Emma Stone plays a woman who is named Bella, and she is brought back to life, kind of Frankenstein-esque, by this doctor played by, what's his name?
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe. And so Willem Dafoe is kind of like the mad scientist, and she, as a Frankenstein-esque character, is learning about life. So she literally knows nothing when he brings her back to life. And over the course of the film, she gets smarter and more intelligent, and she puts the pieces together of how to interact with this new world that she's experiencing.
Yeah. And there's definitely a strong emphasis on how men interact with her, because she is Emma Stone. She's beautiful. And men in this movie notice that about her. And through her nativity.
Yeah,
naivety. They're not nativity. Sorry. Still got Christmas on the mind. Through her naivety, she doesn't respond to men how other people in this era would expect her to. This is kind of a period piece. Like, it seems to take place in that mad scientist era, like late 19th, early 20th century. Right. It never establishes, but it's also kind of a fantastical world where there's steamships and there's zeppelins, and it's kind of a steampunkish world in a sense, without being like full steampunk.
Well, like one of the best visual gags towards the beginning of the movie is that everybody's driving around in like horse-drawn carriage.
Right.
And they've got a car that has like the head of a horse on the front of it, so everybody doesn't freak out that they're driving a car.
Exactly. And, Willem Dafoe's medical devices have all these like plunges and valves and levers to them where they seem sort of hobbled together.
Yep, for sure. So over the course of the movie, she meets, I would say primarily two men that are interested in her. One of them is kind of an assistant to the mad doctor, and he's kind of a sheepish, very respectful dude who grows to like Bella and take an interest in her romantically as well as like intellectually. I think he's interested in her on like multiple levels. And he also seems to generally, there's some troublesome pieces here for sure. So it's not 100% genuinely good-hearted, but comparatively to some of the other characters in this movie, pretty good-hearted, I would say.
Yeah.
This assistant is.
Again, she's pretty naive at the beginning of this movie.
Right.
And there's definitely men taking advantage of that, whether they seem to be nice about it or not. They all kind of see, oh, she doesn't really know the way of the world, so I can shape her how I see her fit.
Right, for sure. And then a little bit later, she meets a character played by Mark Ruffalo. I'm forgetting his name, but I want to use his character's name.
He has a great name.
His name is Duncan.
Duncan Wedderburn.
Right, Duncan Wedderburn.
Yeah.
So Mark Ruffalo shows up playing Duncan Wedderburn, who is kind of like, I don't know, a womanizer, probably.
Yeah, a rake.
Playboy. Sure. He seems to be fairly independently wealthy, and he really likes to spend time with women and kind of use them in whatever way, he wants to, basically.
Yeah, he sees women as kind of disposable. Like, take them on a holiday, have fun for a couple of weeks, and then move on to the next.
Right. So he is attracted to Bella and convinces her to run away with him to another country. I'm forgetting, Lisbon or France, something like that. I don't remember.
They go to Portugal first. Yep.
Portugal first. Yeah. So the movie kind of moves from Frankenstein's castle, where Willem Dafoe's character, Dr. Godwin, from her kind of home, her first years of learning about life, to kind of this adventure, moving from European city to European city, aboard this boat that's kind of moving them around.
Am I correct in memory that when she's in Frankenstein's castle, it's all black and white? The one she leaves for the first time with Duncan, it becomes color. Was that when the transition happened, or was it earlier in the movie?
I don't remember, but I do remember roughly what you're saying, that like it started in black and white and then later turned to color, but I don't remember exactly when that happened. I think that's kind of genius.
Right. It's not like Wizard of Oz where you're like, oh, she opens the door and it's all color. Like at some point this movie transitioned to color. I don't remember exactly when it happened.
I'm curious to know if it even happens like black and white, all of a sudden we're in color. You know what I mean? I wonder if it changes over time, and that's why you
gradual.
And I can't recall.
So it starts in gray tone and then they slowly start adding color.
I don't know. Why else wouldn't we know when it does it?
I mean, maybe just because other things were interesting in the movie.
That could be.
I'm not sure. Yeah. There's a good point. That neither of us remember exactly when it changed the color.
Yeah. I'm curious. If you're listening to this, you've seen Poor Things and there was an exact moment, please leave it in the comments or send us an email.
Let me know.
For sure. Okay. So she's on this ship. She's being taken from European city to European city. She's dealing with the advancements of Duncan, and he is teaching her womanly ways, I would say, to be as PG about it as we can. And she is taking like an aggressive approach to these lessons, so much so that she overwhelms Duncan.
Yes.
Like he's obsessed with her because she's just overwhelming in general. And then they end up breaking up. And more things happen in the movie that we don't need to get into. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's important to say that they end up breaking up more so because she starts to become wiser to the world and more independent.
And she's over him. Like, he's annoying.
Right, exactly. And she realizes that the things that that he gives her, she can get other places and more on her own terms.
Not only that, but he starts to get the most annoying to her once she starts reading and talking to other people who are not only interested in that.
Yep.
And she wants more than just what he wants from her.
And he wants her to himself for whatever he needs. Like he needs his needs met at all times. And then she just needs to be kind of kept away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's generally what happens through the first half of the movie. The back half, I think we should leave mostly as a surprise.
I think we can say the back half is just more of Bella exploring her independence and figuring out who she is as a woman and how she fits into this hierarchy of a world.
Before we get into our thoughts on the movie and maybe more about like some of the presentation, because I definitely want to talk about that, I think we should also say that the movie in general has an attitude towards showing skin that is very European, I would say. I mean, it does not hold back, and the actors in this movie are very brave, I would say.
Yes, yeah.
Because they put their all into it, and didn't leave anything. They went for it. Like, whether it was a rated R scene or whether it was a normal scene, you could tell that everybody was into this movie.
Yes, for sure.
They were, I hesitate to say hamming it up because that's a negative connotation, but they clearly made character choices and they stuck with it through the entire film, for better or for worse. And we'll see if it was for better or for worse for each of us.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, especially Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo was playing it big.
Sure. Well, I think Emma Stone, both of them were just very, like you've never seen either of them before.
I guess for me, and we can kind of get into this more, Mark Ruffalo's his hamminess and his broadness worked better for me than Emma Stone's. I think for me, as the movie went on, I enjoyed Emma Stone's performance more. At the very beginning, for like that first half hour, when she is like when she doesn't have great motor control, she's trying to walk around like a small child. Obviously, she's an adult woman, but she's trying to mimic how like maybe a baby would walk. And I found her performance so robotic and fake. Just her physical performance. Vocally, she wasn't doing a lot because she didn't have like a lot of verbal skills, but just how she was like, her arm, like her elbows were locked at all times, her knees were locked, like she was kind of bending over like a marionette. And I thought it was too much. I was like, okay, I understand that she's trying to mimic maybe how like a baby moves, as they're discovering how their body works, but it didn't feel natural. I felt like I was watching a mannequin move around. And I
didn't even understand that, because later on there's like there's a reveal.
Yes.
That might clue you into why she was acting that way at the beginning. But at the moment, I was taking it on its face as a Frankenstein story. And so the mannequin stiltedness made sense to me.
Okay.
In that moment.
Interesting. Even though I didn't. Okay. I don't want to spoil anything.
Sure.
I guess for me, the stiltedness was too much.
Okay.
Or it just seemed like she was doing too much with it. As the character developed, and she did find this balance in the middle, which I thought was fine. And then obviously by the end, she's much more natural in her movement. But yeah, at first I found her character a little hard to watch just physically. Also, that first like half hour is very Yorgos Lanthimos-y. Like, just there's tons of fisheye and weird angles, and I think he lets up a little bit far like later in the movie, especially once they get out in the world and once it's in color. But this movie was teetering on like what Wes Anderson's doing now. Like it didn't quite go full French Dispatch on me, but I'm like, okay, this could be Yorgos Lanthimos's like or maybe his last movie, The Favorite, was like his Grand Budapest Hotel. And now maybe he's becoming a little absorbed with his own style, like because he's become so big and so popular and so well known within the art world, obviously. So, I mean, I don't know how you felt about the presentation. Like, it's obviously his style, but it felt like he was going really hard with his style at first.
I think it was a good choice to start in black and white because I could not imagine just absorbing what was happening at the beginning if all of that had been in color.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it's switching between not necessarily camera angles, just totally different lenses.
Right.
And different styles of shooting. I don't think anything was handheld. I think it was all like dollied and on tripods and stuff like that. And there's literally like porthole fisheyes in this and stuff like that. And on top of that, they're kind of breezing through this origin story of Bella, along with giving you a good deal of history with the creator, Dr. Godwin. And I thought it was kind of brilliant to kind of give you, like, at first, I didn't watch any of the trailers for this, but I had seen like little bits of it here and there. And so I thought this movie was mostly about Willem Dafoe's character, Dr. Godwin.
From what you knew about it? Or
from what I knew about it. I knew Emma Stone was in it. I knew Mark Ruffalo was in it. I heard they were great in it. But I thought it was mostly a Dr. Godwin story. Just like Frankenstein is mostly about the doctor. Dr. Frankenstein is the doctor and
the monster.
They just call it's just technically the monster, right? Frankenstein isn't the monster. Frankenstein is the doctor.
Well, I mean, who's the real monster in the Frankenstein story?
Sure. Yeah.
No, but you're right. Like the monster is not called Frankenstein. We call it now culturally, but Frankenstein's the doctor, not the monster.
Sure. So in the first 20, 30 minutes of this, there's a good deal of Bella, but mostly I would say it's the doctor and his interactions with his students and in specifically this one student who's assisting him.
Correct. Yeah.
And then the movie turns once Bella gets enough ability for it to be able to focus on her. And I thought that was kind of like a brilliant way of leading us into the story for sure. Also by that point, they've given you a little more information on why Bella is the way she is and have set up once they introduce Mark Ruffalo's character, Duncan, then you're kind of off the races for the next hour, I would say. And then the back half hour is Bella kind of reaching a mental maturity to where she can make her own decisions. We're kind of dancing around it. What did you think of the movie in general? It sounds like you had a little bit of an issue with the beginning of it, but once it got going,
yeah. So I would say I had a little issue with the beginning and the end. The beginning, just because the presentation was so extreme and the performance was so big, it had a little trouble getting into it. But I got into the movie, and like definitely that whole middle when they're traveling, when it's her and Duncan, and they're going from, and she's really growing as a person. I was totally on board with all that, and I thought the ending was interesting, where someone shows up and she goes with that person.
Are we talking about the very end when they're back at the doctor's castle, or when they're in Paris?
After Paris.
Okay, after Paris.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I thought the Paris stuff was very interesting too, about how she was, trying to, I don't know, figure out how the world works. And I won't get into all that. So
sure. When she goes out on her own.
When she goes out on her own. Yeah. I thought, just that commentary wise of like, well, why can't I do this and also do this? And like, why can't I have both things? And, you seem like for a lot of those women, it was one or the other. And she was like, well, I want both. And I can have both. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. I liked it too.
But yeah, in the final like half hour, someone shows up. She decides to go with that person. And that scene really, or those seeds really hammer home, I think for me, what was the sort of the overall message of this movie was sort of how men try to trap women and own them as property. And, like how men can be jealous even for whatever inane reasons. I just felt like that half hour was a little rushed. Like she gets there, she realizes something, and then the movie ends. And it just like, just because we spent so much time with Emma Stone's character as we saw her grow and learn throughout it, then just to see her like come to this conclusion so quickly felt a little rushed for me. And I could have spent more time with her in that other character, even if she got to the same conclusion.
Sure. I mean, that kind of final character that they introduced, I didn't like him, so I was glad that they breezed by that portion of the story.
Right. And I think that was kind of part of it too, was maybe because they're running out of time, they shorthanded him just to be like evil pretty quickly.
Sure.
Like he wasn't complicated or dense. He was just an evil person, a jerk.
Yeah, well, I think he kind of stood as a proxy for like how most men treated women at that time.
Yeah.
And continue to treat
and
women.
continue to, yeah.
You know what I mean? But
just because
specifically his
thematically,
version.
it's yes, right.
That time period's version of that guy was definitely a manifestation of that final character. And the fact that she knows how to handle these people now.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
She's kind of world worn at this point, as she's seen a lot of things, and she's just not going to put up with people, taking advantage of her.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a great way of like illustrating that she had come to her own conclusions in her own way.
Right.
And that there wasn't really going to be anything that was going to stop her from doing things the way she thought was the right way to do it. And so, so it sounds like you had issues with the beginning and the end, but overall you liked it?
Overall, I liked it. And overall, I would recommend this movie to people who can handle Yorgos Lanthimos' style and presentation.
And subject matter.
And so, well, yes, true. And correct.
Like going all the way back to what's the first one? Dogtooth. Right?
Dogtooth, yes.
Dogtooth is an amazing movie that I just can't tell people to watch.
Right, it's hard to recommend Dogtooth. Exactly. Yeah.
Right, because it's there's like incest in that movie and stuff like that. So it's like it's hard to explain why I like that movie so much, because when you read what it is on paper, it's like, what? Why is this on like one of your favorite films lists? And it's like you kind of have to watch it and have an open mind to the idea that like it's going to challenge your perception of these things. And I think most of his movies do that to varying degrees. I think maybe like The Favorite, which is his most popular, his most widely
most
seen
accessible
movie,
one. Yeah.
Right. Is the most accessible. It certainly has some of those things in it, but it's not quite as extreme or taken as seriously as some of his other movies. I think this kind of falls in line with that too. Like even some of its tougher subjects are kind of treated with a childlike approach, to the point where even though the topic is occasionally a rough one for sure, it's boiled down to its essentials of like positive and negative, and then quickly moved on without any generally lifelong consequences.
Yeah.
And so that's not the real world, obviously, but the movie isn't even presenting itself as existing in the real world either.
Right. This is not a heavy movie. You're not going to leave it like, oh man, what a gut punch, or like, even though the themes are serious, it doesn't feel like it's whacking you over the head with melodrama or anything like that.
I agree with you that you and I are probably okay with the way it depicted some things, but there are some topics in here where like, if that topic was something that affected you,
True. Yeah, I guess it's a good point.
This might trigger you.
Again,
like the casualness of some things in this movie, some topics might trigger people.
That's true. We are just bringing a male perspective to this movie that is very feminist at times.
For sure.
Yeah.
Overall, though, I love this movie. I really couldn't find too many faults in it, other than maybe the length. Like I kind of wish it was like 10 or 15 minutes shorter, like a cool 2 hours would have been maybe a little better. But that's not to say like I felt the length, like I couldn't wait for it to be over. It just kind of felt like by the time you got to that last chapter with that new character, I was kind of like, really? Like we're like a good 3/4 of the way through this movie and you're going to introduce a new person? In fact, it took me a second to realize he was a new person.
Yeah.
I was like, who is this? Should I remember this person from some point? And at that point, we hadn't seen the assistant in so long. I thought maybe it was the assistant.
No, well,
for moments.
Okay,
pretty quickly I caught on this is not the assistant, but
because that person shows up in the scene that the assistant is also in.
Right. No, I mean
okay.
within 15 seconds of them bringing him on screen.
Okay.
They reveal who he is and it's not the
yeah.
assistant, but it just seemed really late to introduce another character.
Yeah.
But overall, I thought it was super inventive, quirky, fast-paced, kind of chaotic, but like a beautiful chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of that was intended to reflect Bella's viewpoint. And I think it worked in general. Like the times that I was confused or felt overwhelmed, she just breezed by it because she's learning it for the first time and she doesn't know right from wrong.
Right. Yeah.
So every time I started getting this feeling like this is not what you should be doing, or you're putting yourself in danger, she just had no perception of those things. Right. And also it generally worked out. It
worked out for her. And she's also developing her own right versus wrong. Like she's not sticking to, well, this is what people say you should and shouldn't do. And she just was discovering for herself her own rules.
Yeah. The story never took into account what James from Florida would think is right or wrong.
Yeah. I don't think your opinion really mattered to the filmmaker as they were making this movie.
I don't think anybody's opinion mattered to Yorgos when he was making this movie, nor to Emma or anybody else in the movie, I would say. I think they were making what they agreed to make, and for my money, it turned out pretty well.
This movie reminded me of two directors.
Okay.
The first was Terry Gilliam.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like once they leave the mad scientist lab and they're out in the world, it's a very Terry Gilliam approach. As much as like I thought the ship was maybe designed by him, just how that ship looked like one of his cartoons.
Absolutely.
And the other is Stanley Kubrick, and not so much in the presentation, but I was just watching this movie and I was imagining, like, I think Kubrick could have made this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in the subject matter and the presentation. I think this was something where if he was alive and he had read this book, because he was totally into like reading books and adapting novels. If he had read this book, I would have seen him being very interested in making this movie.
I think it would have been about in halftime, though.
You think it wouldn't have been 2.5 hours long?
No, I mean, like, it probably would have been 3 hours long.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
But it would have been half as fast-paced as far as, like, the editing style and stuff like that.
Oh, for sure, yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, subject-wise, I think this is a subject he would have loved to have adapted into a movie. Just knowing what he was interested in, what he was reading about, and the projects he did adapt.
Absolutely. Yeah, have you ever seen The Adventures of Baron Munchausen?
I have, with Robin Williams and not Sarah Paulson, Sarah Polley, who are two different people.
Sure. That movie totally, we're talking about different movies. The movie I'm talking about has Eric Idle in it, Uma Thurman, Johnny Neville.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Robin Williams is in it.
Yeah, he was the moon. And then Sarah Polley's like the girl throughout the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a really young Sarah Polley?
I mean, like I would say 10 or under. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember how old the girl is. It's been 20 years since I've seen Baron Munchausen.
Yeah. From what I remember, it bombed, right? Yes. It made $8 million. But it only cost 45. That's not that big a bomb.
it made like a fifth of its budget back.
Sure. In 1988.
Right.
That's a lot of money in 1988.
And I think this also came after maybe Time Bandits, which was a big one for him.
Time Bandits, then Brazil.
Oh, Brazil. Okay. Yeah.
Then The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Right. So can you imagine like this guy does Time Bandits, then Brazil, like, oh man, what's his next movie going to be? And I mean, I think people are excited for Baron of Munchausen, just an adaptation of it. But
then he went to director jail and did The Fisher King, which had like a nothing budget.
Which I've never seen.
Sure. That's another Robin Williams movie. You've never seen Fisher King, huh?
I think it's on my watch list just because it's Robin Williams and Gilliam.
It's Robin Williams in one of his first dramatic roles.
Okay.
And then after Fisher King, 12 Monkeys. And then he's like back in the seat
But then there's Lost in La Mancha, which he was trying to adapt, right? And that's another. I mean, that's a documentary about a failed production.
Sure. I mean, there's a long gap between the Zero Theorem in 2013 to The Man Who Killed Don Quixote in 2018.
Okay.
And somewhere in there between, I think The Brothers Grimm, 2005-ish, and The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, he's trying to make that one movie throughout that entire span.
Right, yeah.
And making other things in between. But anyway, we're not talking about Terry Gilliam. We're talking about...
I brought him up. I just thought this movie reminded me very much of his style.
Absolutely. And that movie in particular, when I was looking at those, like, that's the one if I could only select one, that's the one I would pick that, like, absolutely looks like Poor Things from a visual perspective. I also have watched some making ofs and listened to some podcasts where they talk about this movie. And I found it interesting that they generally tried not to use CGI. And so, like, even like there's a scene on the deck of the ship where you're like seeing like a beautiful, crazy colored sunset ocean type thing. They did all that with with LED screens. They,
oh, cool! Really,
as much as they possibly could, they tried to do things in camera. It's not to say there's zero CGI in it, but for the most part, there isn't. And I think that brought an element to it. Between that and the constant switching of camera lenses,
yeah,
you just I never got the feeling like what I was watching was artificial. And I appreciated the movie for that. But probably the thing I appreciate the most about it was the music.
I was about to bring that
insane.
up. Yes. Do you remember that there's a dance scene? Like, I think it's on the boat. And there's this waltz playing, and someone's playing like this, I don't know, this organ made of all these different like trumpet horns, and they're just like stepping on this accordion, and it's making this god awful organ noise. But for whatever reason, it works.
I mean, I was hoping
to it.
I was hoping you could tell me what instrument that was.
I mean, that's not an instrument. That's a homemade instrument.
That's not a real instrument. Are you sure?
I mean, am I one? Can anything be an instrument?
Really? Anything?
I mean, yeah. What is an instrument? Something that produces sound. Define a musical instrument.
Okay, I don't know. I'm not the band teacher here.
Ask Stomp what a musical instrument is. Ask the Blue Man Group what a musical instrument is. Yeah. So no, like that instrument, I don't think that's a. I mean, maybe it is a real instrument, as in like, you know, some avant-garde musician had created that, and then Yorgos Lanthimos used it for this movie. But
sure.
It's not some popular mass well-known instrument. Let's put it that way.
Today, but maybe back then it was.
I don't know why you would want. So describe this. I can describe it better. Imagine like there's bellows at someone's feet, and then these bellows are connected to a bunch of brass bells of various size brass instruments, right? And then when you step on the bellows, that forces air through all the brass instruments, and you get kind of this cacophony of sound, of brass sound coming out of it. It sounds really cool. I don't know how you can like adjust the pitch on those. There's no valves, there's no slide. You're just going to get whatever note comes out that pipe you're going to get. So I don't know if you could play it beyond making like a soundscape. Like I don't think you could play a melody on it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm unconvinced.
Well, you know,
I think they're real. Let me live in my reality where they're real.
I mean, it's real because it's in the movie. Like so yes, you could call it real. Someone builds a prop of it at least. Whether that's the sound it actually makes or if it works, I don't know. But
I mean, at that moment, that band was playing the music that was in the scene. So, do you think maybe that was pre-recorded and those people were just playing fake instruments, or do you think those instruments were really playing that music?
Most of the time when you're watching a movie, the musicians are miming to a track. Now, there still are actual musicians. They're not fake players. And they may have recorded the track that they're miming, because there's definitely rules on like how musicians are in movies, what they're shown doing. So yeah, I would say generally speaking, if you see
there's rules. What do you mean there's rules?
Like union rules. Like there's the musicians, actors, or part of SAG, whatever you want to call it.
There's a musician like Wait. Okay. So not anybody can pretend to be a musician in film?
I'm not going to say that because there's definitely been like Dan Aykroyd played the tuba in My Girl. I know this because I studied the tuba. So like this is my weird.
So you
movie
keep track
reference.
of all movies that have the tuba in them.
Yeah. So Dan Aykroyd like plays the tuba in My Girl.
Uh-huh.
He's not playing the tuba. Like he's miming it. And a famous tuba player, I think his name was Roger Bobo, did the actual tuba playing for that scene. And then he's on to it.
You know way more about My Girl than I ever imagined.
Hey, whenever there's a tuba in a movie and you're a lowbrow student, you know these things.
Just because they're never in movies? Is that what?
Right, yeah. They're never movies seriously. Like if there's a tuba in a movie, there's some like fat guy with puffy cheeks playing it. like Dan Aykroyd is a sincere tuba player in My Girl, and you just don't see sincere tuba players.
So wait, normally when there's a tuba player, they're overweight. But in reality, most tuba players aren't overweight.
I would say in reality, a tuba player will look like an average person. So they run the gamut of small, skinny people to large, overweight people.
See, I'm trying to be sensitive here, but tubas are really heavy. And so whenever I experience a tuba in real life, it's normally a big person.
Well, okay, but they rest on they rest on your chair. Are you talking like the sousaphone that wraps around you? Like the marching
No,
band
I'm just talking about getting a tuba from one place to another to set it down and play it. Well, you don't see too many short people walking around with a tuba.
You never taught middle school band.
I guess not. I don't know. That's just my life experience. It's all anecdotal. Okay. Obviously, I haven't been in the right rooms, evidently, to see all the Oompa Loompas walking around with tubas.
Well, having been to at least one international tuba euphonium conference, I can tell you that tuba players come in all shapes and sizes.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I don't even know where. Anyway, backing up music. Yes. Usually when you see background musicians, like background extras playing instruments, those are actual musicians. They are playing the instrument correctly. For the scene, they may be miming to a recording because obviously you can't have them playing live because there's dialogue or other things going on. But oftentimes they're also the musicians that played the recording. So like a group will record the waltz they want or whatever it is. And then they'll be there miming the music for the scene. I'm not saying that's 100% of the time, but like oftentimes the musicians are actual musicians who know what they're doing.
What if they're playing fake instruments?
like
you
like
say
in Fifth
they are
Element.
in this movie.
Yeah. Obviously in that case, it's a little different story.
You just get anybody, right?
That's why I can't say all the time it happens because there's fake instruments and there's fake music and all that stuff. Enough. But
my point is the music in this movie is just unhinged, I would say, in like a very Victorian way.
Yep.
And I was there for it. Every time something got absolutely weird from a original soundtrack perspective, I was like, okay, this is really cooking for me right now.
Yeah, this might be the original score that stood out to me the most so far from this year. I can't think of many other movies where I'm like, oh yeah, the music in that movie was great.
I can't really think of any. Like this is the only one that hits my brain.
This is the only one that really stood out. Yeah, and maybe it's because it's the end of the year, but
right. Like I remember the soundtrack to Across the Universe, the Spider-Man animated movie, being great, but like from a score perspective, Oppenheimer was interesting too. But Oppenheimer is like so subtle compared to this. This is like the music is a part of the wackiness, and it complemented. Not that the music in Oppenheimer didn't complement it. It just was meant to complement in a different way.
Who's the composer on this? Cinematography. I'm just scrolling really quick.
Sure.
Yurskin Fendrix, who I've never heard of before.
Did he do like Yorgos' other movies?
We're going to find out right now.
All right. I can't
wait.
wait.
No, this is his first movie as a composer.
Really? Interesting. Yeah. I wonder if like this is the type of stuff he normally does, and that's why Yorgos, drafted him.
Yeah, it says in his quick little TMB bio that he is associated with the music scene surrounding the Windmill Pub in Brixton, alongside bands such as Black Midi and Black Country New Road.
I got to listen to a couple of those tracks and see what Yorgos, how that connects.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but I imagine this movie will get an Oscar nomination for music.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's pretty crazy if this is your first movie score and you get a nomination out of it.
I feel like this is going to get a lot of nominations.
Yes. I think like this movie, and I've heard this movie compared to Barbie a lot.
Sure. From like a subject perspective, like the main characters are women and they're both discovering worlds that for the first time and realizing that life maybe isn't exactly how they thought it was.
Exactly. Yeah. Thematically, they're very similar. Presentation wise, very different movies.
Yes, I agree.
Well,
they're different, but they're also very fantastical, bright places.
True. In that sense, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh.
I would say that there's more danger in this movie, even though this movie is lighter. It's not a heavy movie to our standards. There's definitely more of a sense of danger in this movie, where Barbie is I mean, you don't have Will Ferrell running around chasing Emma Stone in this movie.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people try to take advantage of Barbie, but not in the same ways that people try to take advantage of Bella.
No.
In Poor Things.
No.
why
Barbie's
do you
also
think
like
they named
a Mattel movie. So
sure.
Yeah.
Why do you think they named it Poor Things? I kept waiting for them to say like, "Oh, you poor things" or something, and they just never do.
I mean, again, maybe the movie is kind of saying like, "Oh, women, these poor things." Like how they're treated. That could be why it's called that.
I'm pretty sure like the original story is named Poor Things, so short of the fact that they named it after the book.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm curious to know if the book has more of a connection to that idea of like a little bit of like taking pity on people, because that's what I associate that phrase with.
Right. But when I hear someone say, "Oh, you poor thing," it's kind of like doting, like, and I don't feel like this movie was doting on Bella at all.
Right, like a shallow, shallow. I don't know. I don't know what the word is.
Maybe it's to kind of point out her naivety. I can't say that word now.
Naivety?
Naiveness. Let's say naiveness. I got nativity stuck in my head now, and I can't like get off that word. Maybe it's the poor thing is like when she's naive. Like, "Oh, you poor thing, you're so naive." And then as the movie goes on,
naivety.
It sounds like a foreign language to me. I'm like Joey speaking French. Naivety.
I don't know why.
Nativity.
Yeah, I mean, I could see costuming, music, pretty much any technical award
for sure.
And then performance for the three leads. I could see those being easy, maybe not wins, but nominations.
Right. I can see a best director nomination. There's only 5, but I can see it as a possibility. And probably a best adapted screenplay also. Like, I'm sure this one's going to get a ton of nominations. Yeah.
But that being said, like Dogtooth, like a lot of other Yorgos Lanthimos movies, as much as Kyle and I enjoyed it, it's an adult movie.
It's hard to recommend to someone.
Right. I recommend it to people who are pretty adventurous in their movie watching.
Yeah.
And are not afraid of popping in an NC-17 movie because you've heard there's artistic value to it. You know what I mean? Like,
but this is an NC-17 though.
It's not, but I'm saying like, if you're the type of person that will do that, then Poor Things will be fine for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If you're the person that doesn't mind a hard R or a European attitude towards skin, then Poor Things will be fine for you.
Right.
If you're pretty sensitive to flesh on screen and a casual attitude about such things, then you probably won't enjoy Poor Things. I think you'll be annoyed by it, probably.
Or if you don't like how Yorgos Lanthimos makes movies, his director style.
It is a little chaotic and in your face. Yep.
Megan and I made a list of like the movies that we want to watch together from 2023. I put this on the list. I was like, oh, do you want to see this movie? And she was like, well, tell me about it. And I kind of told her the subject matter. She's like, okay, that's interesting. And I said, now it's directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. And she goes, who's that? I'm like, it's the lobster guy. And she just recoiled. So she was like, well, you go see it and then let me know if I should see it or not. And I went to go see it. I came home like, I don't think you're going to like it. Like, not that the subject matter would bother her or any of the skin. It's just the Lanthimos approach to everything would just turn her off completely.
Sure. Are you watching The Curse?
No, I want to watch The Curse. I don't have Showtime, so I need to find that somewhere else. But
Nice.
I'm intrigued by that.
It's pretty wild because Emma Stone is in that as well. And I've been watching it, and it's just such a different character than Bella in Poor Things. I mean, I know she's an actress. She's going to act different in things for sure. But I think she kind of built her career, not necessarily not taking chances, but like probably the roles that were presented to her were like Girl Next Door, romance type stuff, comedy, that type of stuff, like the Easy A type of stuff, which is kind of her breakout movie as the star of a movie. And she's definitely entered this zone where like I don't know if she has no interest in doing those things, but she's definitely not taking projects. Like since La La Land, it kind of seems like she has no need to take those things anymore.
I don't think she needs to. I think she's at a point where she has enough pedigree and she's so consistent that she can choose her projects.
Right.
And like they're not pushing people away.
Not yet.
Not
yet. I mean, not enough people will see this movie to like, have a groundswell of people who absolutely did not like it. But it's possible to turn off an audience.
But I mean, I feel like I'm trying to think of other things she's done. Like, what else has she done since La La Land?
She had one that I couldn't finish that was on Netflix. It was like a limited series with Jonah Hill.
Okay.
And I was ready to be into it. And then I watched like the first 2 episodes, and rarely do I not finish a TV show that's a limited series because you're only talking like 6 to 8 episodes, but I just could not do it. I'm forgetting the name of it, but that was another one where the acting in it was bizarre, I would say, and not in like a good way.
Right. I mean, like I'm looking at like what she's been doing. Like she did La La Land, right? Then she did The Favorite, which even though is Yorgos Lanthimos, it's pretty accessible
compared to this for sure.
Yeah. Was Maniac the series you're talking about?
No, this was a TV show, so it probably won't be in her.
Okay. Yeah, but then she did like Zombieland, The Croods, and Cruella, which are all pretty accessible movies to everyone if they want to see them.
Sure.
And then she does Poor Things. So it really seems like she's doing like 1 for me, 3 for them.
Yeah.
Which
maybe she is at this point.
Yeah, which I think is maybe the smart way to. Again, I'm not in the industry whatsoever. I'm not an actor, but like if you can choose your projects, maybe the way to do it is like, yeah, I'll do 1 or 2 for myself, then I'll do 1 or 2 for the people, just to like keep my cred up.
Oh yeah, she did Cruella too. Did you see that?
I never saw Cruella. I'm sure it was fine, but
I saw it. It was all right.
Yeah, I just have no interest in these live action Disney movies, even if they're prequels or whatever. Just I don't care.
Sure. I mean, Cruella was interesting in that like they presented her kind of like as a punk rocker.
Yeah.
Which is not the Cruella character at all. And so it was a strange one. But I think it was direct to Disney Plus during the pandemic.
I don't remember. Yeah,
it got kind of killed.
It's a pandemic movie for sure.
Yeah.
All
right. Anything else on Poor Things, or have we said it all?
Music was the last thing I wanted to talk about. Do we hit that?
Nice. All right. Final thoughts and Letterboxd rankings. What are you going to give it?
Final thoughts. I would say take the whole family.
Right. Sure. And send them all to some other movie. Right. You go to this one.
You go to Poor Things. Except be weird about it. Send the whole family to another movie except tell you like your one uncle. Be like, hey, let's go see this movie together. Like, why do you invite me? Just single one person out to take with you and make them very uncomfortable.
Sure. Yeah, that's ultimate creepiness, I would say.
No other things to add besides that.
Okay, not even a star rating? You don't want to give it a star rating?
I don't want to give it away. I feel like I'm going to ruin my... If I tell the star rating now, no one's going to listen to our top 20 of 2023 because they can just figure it all out.
Oh, interesting.
No, I'll give a star rating.
Okay.
I would say this is a very solid 4 stars. Not quite a 4.5, just because of some issues I had with the beginning and the end. But
sure,
definitely 4 stars.
Well, I disagree. I don't think it's a 4-star. I think it is a 4.5.
Awesome,
but that might be just our difference of opinion on the beginning, like the pace of the beginning. I think generally we're in line on the end. Like your issues with the end, I think I generally reflect those.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, overall, I thought this was one of his best. And if you see it and you hate it, that might color your opinion of me. But I absolutely thought it was. It felt like a Terry Gilliam movie, another director I'm a big fan of, and it felt like a modern Terry Gilliam movie. And I like the sensibility. Now, could I watch every movie in this style? No, it would get annoying, and
it would be like a Wes Anderson thing.
It would be brutal, right? Yeah. Like if he's gonna make movies exactly like this, which so far he's been hard to pin down, other than like subject matter. He seems to be very consistent with the subject matter, but with the style. Maybe the favorite, you can see the style go favorite to Poor Things, but all those other movies kind of feel they have similar styles here and there, but for the most part, they all live in their own universes.
Right.
So I don't want him to just make these movies like The Favorite or Poor Things, but at the same time, I forget what I'm going. 4.5 stars. That's what I'm trying. That's what I'm saying. Going. Nice. 4.5. Not quite perfect. Pretty close. So 4 and a 4.5 for Poor Things. Next, we're going to talk about the biographical drama, Maestro, which is on Netflix now. Zach's going to join us for this review. We'll catch up with him on the other side of this clip.
Seems I'm attracted to a certain type.
Listen, Lenny loves you. He really does. He's just a man. A horribly aging man who cannot just be wholly one thing. He's lost.
I've always known who he is. He called me,
And?
He wants us all to go to Fairfield together for 2 weeks. He sounded different.
Felicia.
No, let's not make excuses. He didn't fail me.
Felicia.
No, it's my own arrogance to think I could survive on what he could give. It's just so ironic. I would look at everyone, even my own children, with such pity because of their longing for his attention. It was sort of a banner I wore so proudly. I don't need. And look at me now. Who's the one who hasn't been honest?
That was Maestro, a 2023 American biographical romantic drama that centers on the relationship between American composer Leonard Bernstein and his wife, Felicia Montalegre, is how I'm going to choose to pronounce it. This movie was directed by Bradley Cooper.
Bernstein. She has 4 names.
She does?
Yes, Felicia Montalegre Cohn Bernstein.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'm sorry if your Wikipedia is not correct on that one.
It's not. This movie was directed by Bradley Cooper, and it stars Carey Mulligan and Bradley Cooper, amongst others. The official IMDb plot synopsis for Maestro is: this love story chronicles the lifelong relationship of conductor-composer Leonard Bernstein and his actress Felicia Montalegre Cohn Bernstein. And actress Felicia Montalegre Cohn Bernstein, not and his actress. Shouldn't they say his wife? I mean, that's what the bulk of the movie. They're married.
Yeah, eventually. But I think it's showing the relationship in general, and they're not always husband and wife.
I guess
she was always an actress.
The vast majority of it. their husband and wife.
James, I know that you like defining women by their husbands. So
how dare you?
Didn't you learn anything from Poor Things at all?
I tried, Kyle. I really tried. I learned about musical instruments. Maestro is a movie we've all seen. We saw it on Netflix. It's a movie I saw like, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, whenever it came out. Like I saw it that weekend. So you guys might have to refresh my memory because I think it might be fresher for you guys. But what did you think of Bradley Cooper's Maestro?
I love to hear what Zach has to say as he is taking his hands out of his ears, no longer saying la la la, and can rejoin the conversation.
Okay, so about Maestro, I have some pros and cons. Here are the pros. I love the cinematography. I think it's just very, very gorgeously shot. I love the black and white. I love the creative, edits, to edit between various scenes and time and stuff like that. So I thought it looked awesome. I thought the acting was phenomenal. I really liked Bradley Cooper's acting a ton. Carey Mulligan's acting a ton. I thought that they embodied characters. So I really forgot about Bradley Cooper. And he was so different from what I think of as Bradley Cooper that I just thought it was a really amazing performance. And I believed Carey Mulligan and him and all of that kind of thing. So those are my pros. My cons are I didn't care about the plot at all. And I was rather bored most of the time. It seems like the entire plot is kind of summarized in like a sentence, and there was just no surprises. There was nothing too interesting. It just seemed like a domestic affair, understanding that I just don't know. I don't know what the movie is here necessarily. I found it pretty uneventful, uninteresting, pretty boring as far as like a plot thing goes. Just have these performances on screen and the cinematography, it has a reason to exist. But I don't think much was said, much ground was overturned. I don't know what this movie gave us as far as like if it had a message or a story it had to tell. It seemed like a pretty ho-hum story to me. What'd you guys think?
Yeah, Zach, I think you summed it up perfectly of how I felt about this movie. Carey Mulligan, I thought she was amazing in this. Like, this is one of my favorite performances from her I can think of. I'm not familiar with this character. I'm not familiar with Felicia, but I just thought I found her very believable, and obviously she's based on a real person. And I thought the performance was incredible. And Leonard Bernstein, I'm way more familiar with my music background. And I thought that Bradley Cooper did a great job of capturing his mannerisms and his personality from what I've seen. Like I've never met the guy, but I saw him on television appearances and his young people's concerts and things like that. And I thought that Bradley Cooper did an amazing job of disappearing into that character. But yeah, like I didn't know what this movie was about besides, it's about their marriage and how it goes hot and cold because of, Bernstein's actual sexuality. And like so much of this movie is like, so much of it is from Carey Mulligan's perspective, where, she's in love with him and then she isn't, and then she is again, then she isn't. But I never got a sense of like, well, why is she not in love with him now? Like, what did he do where she's like now kind of cold on this relationship? And then now why is she back in love with him again? And it's kind of like, he didn't seem to change much within the relationship in this movie. Like, he seemed to be kind of the same person the entire time. And maybe that was sort of the agreement. And she seemed to be the one that was kind of coming in and out of being okay with this arrangement, with this marriage. But I didn't get a sense of why at any time. Like, there's a lot of conversations, but I wasn't quite sure where they're going in that sense. I just miss the music. Like, when I think of Leonard Bernstein, I think of the composer, the musician, and they had little bits of it, the conductor. Like, he mentions West Side Story at one point, and then later they play some of his music. And there is a great scene where he's conducting in a church that was like this long take, which I thought was just showed the physicality of Bernstein as a conductor. He had a choir at one point sing my favorite Bernstein song, Make Our Garden Grow, from Candide, which is a very powerful, incredible song. So anytime the music happened, I kind of lit up and was excited for this movie. And then we got back into this domestic drama. I just sort of lost interest again and was waiting for that next musical moment. And I mean, for a movie I know this movie is not really so much about Bernstein, the musician, more the relationship, but I think there's so many missed opportunities to talk about who he was as a musician, who he was as a composer, as a conductor, and maybe how can you tie in how his marriage then informed his works. I think they could have maybe better married the two parts of him instead of just focusing so much more on this marriage. I don't know, James, what did you think?
I really don't give a crap about Leonard Bernstein or his story for the most part. I mean, I generally know who he is. I understand, like, he wrote the score of like classic movies. He did far more than that, but that's my,
for a lot of people, like, he's the West Side Story guy.
Right. Exactly.
Which is totally fine. Yeah.
And so that's what I knew about him, and had no clue about his sexuality or his relationship with his wife, or if he had a wife type of thing. I assumed he did based on the trailers for this movie, but again, I don't know who he is. The movie didn't necessarily make me care about those things either, as far as like his career goes. But maybe since I didn't care about them to begin with, the fact that those elements weren't in the movie didn't bother me at all, because I was invested in the character story of these two people, who I think legitimately fell in love. I think it's less clear to me. I think Leonard Bernstein, as presented in this movie, his sexuality is kind of fluid, or at least open to a lot of options, I would say. And so I think that the moments that are depicted at the beginning of the movie, earlier on in their relationship, are genuine. And that there really isn't at least in the movie, from what I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no discussion about this is how it's going to be going forward. It's just over time, it's clear that this guy has needs that she's never going to fulfill. And so he just goes and gets them fulfilled, and she's never, it's not an agreement. He just does it.
I disagree. I believe
I disagree
it was
as well.
an agreement. Yes.
Yeah.
The movie
even
Like they have a
references-
discussion about that?
kind
Not
of
on scene, but they reference a discussion for sure.
right. And then same for like at the kind of proposal scene, like where they decide to get married. She says something like, I know who you truly are, or I know what you truly love. So and it's also just recorded fact that like it was that she knew she knew about his sexuality, and that, they still loved each other. Like this wasn't like an arranged marriage or like I'm going to try and trick people by marrying this woman. Like there definitely was love there. And she was at least initially okay with, hey, we can love each other. I can't give you everything you need, but that's okay. But obviously we see through the story, it becomes not okay to her. But those are the parts where it didn't feel fleshed out for me. Cause again, she would just be hot and cold. And I'm sure there were inciting moments or things going on in her head that were like, well, I can't, like, he's being not being discreet enough, or this is really bothering me. But I guess those moments weren't really brought out as much as I was hoping them to be, to kind of give me an idea of where her headspace was throughout this movie.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I interpreted it differently. And maybe that's coming to the story with the same kind of naivety that I implied in her character.
There's naivety.
Naivety?
Not joking.
Not nativity.
Naivete.
No.
Naivete.
Yeah. It's just that I saw the relationship as one that was meant to be faithful, and he's not. And I think she was hurt by that, and she deals with it, and she figures out what she can stomach and what she can't. And there's certain points in the movie where they let you in on conversations that were the high point of the movie for me. Those conversations where she's over it and she's giving him reasons to like not act like that anymore. And he sometimes takes her up on that and sometimes he doesn't, type of thing. And he's kind of just too famous and too I mean, you can always leave somebody, certainly, but they have kids together. And yeah, there's reasons in the movie why they stay together, I would say.
Right.
And so from just a strictly story perspective, I was into it, I guess is what I'm saying. But also, I don't care if I don't get to see how great a composer he was. I kind of feel like I got enough of that with what the movie gave me with that one sweaty performance. I was like, oh, he's good at this. Great. You know what I mean?
Kyle wanted like, shots between the legs, like, trick shots.
Sure.
Yeah, I really wanted to see him try and cue the oboes, the trombones, and the percussion at the same time. Like, how are you going to do that, man? But
right.
Never.
Not being a
while also
conductor
bringing the
myself.
crescendo. So
not being a conductor myself, it's hard for me to tell exactly how a good conductor would do this.
I mean, I wouldn't call myself a conductor. I was definitely more of a timekeeper than like a empathetic conductor like Bernstein was. I'm not trying to say I was the Bernstein in the middle school band, guys.
What is here though, I really love the presentation of.
Okay.
All the acting, I think I agree with you guys. Like what is there is like as top notch.
James suddenly
as it can
started
get.
conducting as he's talking.
Yeah,
I know, like
now
got his
very
hands
much like-
involved in there, and
yeah.
And I really liked the setup at the beginning where they cut it like an old Hollywood movie. And it was like all black and white in the early relationship stage. I was like, this is kind of cool. I hope they don't do it the whole time, which they didn't. But it felt like that was the innocent stage. And then once they get into like, he's famous and things are exploding, that's when it turns into kind of like a more standard presentation drama. But I was really digging the vibe of the beginning.
Yeah, James, that's a good point. I noticed that like at the beginning, it felt heightened a little bit, or it kind of felt like you were watching like a 1940s movie, just in how they were acting and presenting themselves. And there even is like a dance sequence, which is obviously heightened itself.
And it's black and white.
And it's all black and white. Yeah.
This is the second movie we talked about that had a black and white opening.
Yeah. Now, James, do you remember exactly, or maybe Zach, do you remember exactly when it changed from black and white to color?
Wasn't it color when he was playing his concert inside his house on the piano for the film crew?
At the very yeah, so it started
very
in color
beginning,
in like 16 by in letterboxed, and then it went to black and white with the I don't know, 4x3, and then at some point went to color, but was still in 4x3. So it kind of slowly transitioned from like old traditional to modern.
I don't remember exactly when. Zach, do you remember exactly when?
No.
Did you even notice it went to black and white?
Of course.
Okay.
Sure. The first thing I said in my review is how beautiful the black and white was.
Okay.
Yeah, we are 0-2 for noticing black and white to color transitions in these movies, or remembering when they happened.
Sure. Before we get in any deeper, I think we need to answer this Discord message.
Oh yeah.
Somebody asked in Discord, they wanted to know if we're going to talk about Maestro, and they pointed out Kyle specifically. They say, I'm really interested in what Kyle thinks of Bradley Cooper's performance in the movie, as he's the only person he knows who could be knowledgeable in orchestral music or conductors specifically. This person thought the performance was way over the top, and that the guy was too drenched in sweat, and he was flailing around wildly and doing a stupid voice, and it drove him crazy. Opinions, Kyle?
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna work backwards.
Okay.
So I'm not familiar with Leonard Bernstein's voice as he was older. Like I watch more of like his young people's concerts, which we kind of saw him doing a little bit. They reference, and that was more in like the 60s. So I thought that the young Bernstein voice that Bradley Cooper was doing was spot on. It is kind of this mid-Atlantic. There's a little lilt to it. but I thought he did a great job of capturing the voice of that age of Bernstein. I don't know enough about older Bernstein to say, like, because the voice has a marked change. Like, it gets much deeper, it gets much more in the back of the throat. It's more sing-songy, I would say, almost a little bit as he was older, at least how Cooper was doing it. I can't attest to that. So I'd have to go back and like watch some older interviews to see if he was doing that voice or not.
Which that conductor scene was like later on in his career, right?
Yes, that conductor scene was later on in his career. And yeah, that was 100% how Bernstein conducted. I mean, even at the end of the movie, they showed him actually conducting. You know, as he was older. I mean, I don't think it was his last performance, one of his later ones. And yeah, you see how physical he was and energetic he was, and how much he moved and sweated. So, like, maybe people could find just that whole idea of being a conductor so over the top of like being the center of attention. But Bernstein for sure was a very big and physical conductor. So I was not bothered by that one scene in the church whatsoever. And that was maybe one of my favorite scenes of the entire movie. Just to see, I thought Cooper captured the passion, captured Bernstein's passion so well through that moment.
All right, Zach,
is there a conductor that's the exact opposite, that's like known for like being super stiff and just giving nothing?
Yeah, then they don't become famous because
there's no famous conductors like that.
Not that I know of. No.
Okay.
No. I mean, so when I think of a orchestral conductor at that level, they're not rehearsing the group. They're not like going through, oh, hey, you guys missed an A sharp or whatever like that. Like it's not like our band experience where we're doing this rehearsal. Those rehearsals with those groups, like those musicians come in, they already know their parts perfectly. It's now the conductor is there to now like take all, they're like an artist. They're taking all the raw material and making it into a piece. So everyone knows their parts, and it may be like a famous piece like, you know, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which everyone knows, but every conductor is going to interpret a little different. What did Beethoven mean when he put these notes on this page? What does the score mean here? So it's the conductor's job at that level to interpret the piece and to get the orchestra to be on the same page as him or her and say, like, this is how we're performing this. And a lot of their physicality is keeping time, but also to then communicate through their physical presence what kind of emotion or action they want the orchestra to do in those moments. So I think that's one reason why you see famous composers being so big, is because, or being having such huge transitions in their physicality, is because they're trying to interpret the music how they want it to the orchestra, who could be 180 members in front of them. So it's hard to be small in those situations.
Bradley Cooper's conducting in this film struck me as being accurate. I got the sense from it that like this is a reasonable interpretation of what someone would do.
Yeah. And especially of what Bernstein would do specifically.
Can I just say something like that might be mildly controversial?
Please.
Isn't conducting kind of just like a bowl of malarkey? I mean,
no.
They literally didn't listen to anything you said.
No, I heard what he was saying. What I'm saying is like you're communicating the energy that you'd like the musicians to play at, but they're not actually watching your wand go up and down and like adjusting how hard they're going.
Yes, they are.
Then why are most of them looking down and not even looking at the conductor?
It's two things. One, it's peripheral. Like musicians set up their stand so that way it's at a height where they can see their music, but like in their peripheral right here is the conductor. And then there's a lot of eyes going back and forth between music conductor. So like when I'm playing, I haven't played in a group in a while, but when I was playing in like concert bands, I'm looking at my music. I can see the conductor right here in my peripheral, and I'm checking in. I also know through rehearsal that there are certain moments where like the conductor is going to turn to my section and they're going to cue me, or they're going to do something that's specifically directed towards my instrument section. So at those moments, I know look at the
You're
conductor.
waiting for it. Yeah.
Right. I don't need necessarily look at the music at that point. I know I'm be holding this note or whatever. So then my eyes are on the conductor and then I can see the cue. Right. So
right, but the cue is not going to change. The piece doesn't change based on the conductor.
That's not true, James.
No,
James, I've watched some pretty cool YouTube videos where it takes a symphony and you're watching rehearsal and the conductor is like over the course of like 4 minutes, like communicating to them different things and stuff. And then how it sounds at the end of the 4 minutes compared to how it sounds before is like way different.
Right. But are they playing a piece that was already pre-written?
Yeah.
Yeah, but those are just notes on the page, right? Like the only reason why all 100 or 180 or however many members there play together is because the conductor is like, this is how fast we're playing this, and this is how slow we're going to be, and this is when this part starts and stops.
Right, but those could all be things that are communicated in advance.
Well, yes and no. It's one of those things where, like, you can, okay, so there's something called a fermata, James. Okay. And a fermata is where the orchestra holds a note. Okay. And in fact, they did a little bit of that with the older Bernstein, who's in the conducting class. And he's like, how are you going to cue these 3 different groups? Right. So all it says on the page on the fermata is there's the note and then the fermata symbol. And it basically means hold until the conductor tells you to move on. And the conductor may want you to hold that for 2 seconds. They want you to hold that for 10 seconds. They may think in rehearsal, we're going to hold this for like 4 seconds. And then in that live performance, they're feeling a different energy. And they're like, we're going to milk this. We're going to hold this note until the audience can't stand it. And then we're going to move on. And as a performer, you can't be like, well, in rehearsal, he held it for 4 seconds. So I'm just going to move on after 4. Like, as a performer, you're watching that conductor. And if they're going longer than you're expecting, you're on that ride until they then continue. I mean, it's called conductor, like a trained conductor, like they are in charge of the engine.
I understand and accept that, like, the conductor can change certain things over the course. I'm just not sure it's necessary, I guess, is what I'm saying.
No, but
James, think of it like this. Okay, the players are the actors. The music is the script. But how much power does the editor have in shaping a movie?
The director,
right?
Sure.
Yeah, the editor is the director. Is the conductor.
Yeah.
I would say the director.
The script is the music. The script is the music.
Sure.
Okay. The conductor is who decides how it comes out in the final performance. How is the script interpreted? How are the actors, like, portrayed?
Sure. All right. I understand the comparison. I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I do disagree that conductors are wholly necessary in recording music.
James, you watch some YouTube videos of a conductor in rehearsal and see if you can see a role.
Maybe I just have more faith in professional musicians than you guys do. That they would be able to play the notes and interpret it together as a team without some guy flailing his arms up and down in front of them.
So you don't believe in coaches for, like, sports teams?
I'm not saying somebody couldn't get them on the same page before the show starts. Just saying I'm not sure a guy needs to be in the middle.
During a game, do you believe coaches do anything matter?
Sure, but they're not playing football here. They're repeating something on a page. That's not going to change.
But it's same for actors. Like, I'm pretty sure without George Lucas, those guys could have figured out a Star Wars by themselves. Like, it's all on the page. I don't understand why they need someone there telling them the vision. It's all right there. Like, don't you have any faith in those actors?
I'm saying somebody could tell them the vision. Like, this is going to be an energetic performance of this, not a low key performance. We're going to do it in, I don't know musical terms. So we're going to do it.
Who's going to tell them?
4.
Yeah. Well, what does energetic mean? So you
maybe
say
the conductor tells them that before. I'm just saying the conductor doesn't need to be in the middle and make the show about him.
James, have you ever played in a band?
Yes, but not since 4th grade. We didn't have a conductor. We were awesome.
What do you think would have happened to your was this like 4th grade concert band or like 4th grade like garage band?
4th grade concert band.
What do you think would have happened to that 4th grade band playing Hot Cross Buns if there wasn't someone in front waving their arms around?
We played more complicated things than Hot Cross Buns.
Okay.
Mary Had a Little Lamb comes to mind.
Yep, same three notes.
What instrument was this, James?
What
instrument was this in 4th grade?
I played bass clarinet. First chair, I'll have you.
First chair, 4th grade bass clarinet. Were you the only bass clarinet?
No, there was 2.
4th graders playing bass clarinet?
Yeah. You know why I played bass clarinet?
Because you were tall.
Because I could carry it around, much like tuba players.
Much like tuba.
They only give it to the big kids.
All shapes and sizes, James. We've already established this.
See, I told you this was a controversial opinion. I don't. Conductors, they're great. They're entertaining. They're fun. Not entirely necessary, though, my opinion.
Okay. So this be my last point that we can move on.
Okay.
I have a favorite Shostakovich recording. It's Shostakovich 12, the first movement. It's very cool. It's got these great sounds. There's this moment in like about 4 or 5 minutes into it where the horns come in with this big dark sound, and it sounds like Darth Vader's entrance. Like you hear this and you're like, oh, John Williams heard this and reinterpret this for like, Star Wars, which is totally fine. Like that's how music works. Anyway, the recording I heard it from, which is by Herbert von Karajan, who's a very famous German conductor. He did it very slow and he milked it out. And it's like this big, slow, doomy part of this piece. Right. And then I got another recording of the exact same piece, different orchestra, different conductor. They got to my favorite part and they went by twice as fast. Like they just flew through that part, which I was like waiting for let's milk it. Same music in front of them, same caliber musicians, different interpretations. Mm-hmm. And that's what the conductor does, is they're looking at this music and they're like, which way are we going to do this? And if you just leave up to the musicians all the time, they're going to be like, well, last time we did it this way, so we're going to do that way again. So I think you need those conductors to take the pieces don't change, right? Beethoven's not writing anything new. It's been there for almost 200 years now. It's not going anywhere. So the conductor gets a chance to be like, hey, let's play Beethoven this way or that way, or I heard it this way, I want to do that.
Sure. And I feel like that could be communicated before the performance.
Yeah, the conductor can just send an email out.
There's practice.
Here are the bullet points.
Well, the vast majority of this is already worked out in practice.
Right. I mean, conductors during the performance, not necessary. That's what I'm saying.
It's like the coaches should stay home.
No, those things change. Games change over the course of the thing. This does not change.
Music changes. It
can change in advance.
No, sorry, I'm getting very passionate right now.
You got to feel out the room, James.
Let's say I was going to give a speech, right? And I had a coach. I had a coach for a speech, right? It's a written speech. It's going to be the same words. I will practice with that coach, and then I will go in front of a crowd and give the speech. Does the coach stand in front of me waving his hands around so I'll know when the high points?
You're one person giving that speech.
I'm just saying.
Solo artists don't have conductors. Small ensembles do not have conductors. Once you have hundreds, if not dozens of people, then you need that cohesiveness to keep it all together.
Okay. See, now you're making a point that kind of makes sense to me.
Okay.
So I might come around.
Okay.
But it's not because the game's going to change midway, because you could plan for that. Just like you could probably practice 108 people enough that you didn't need a conductor.
James, can I ask you a question? Let's say you're just a solo musician doing a concert, okay? Sure. You're a singer. You're a pop star, okay? Right. Do you think that they perform their set a little bit differently based on like the energy of the crowd or the venue or the specifics of the night? Like, do you think it's an exact recording from night to night, or do they change a little bit based on the vibe of the room? If you're a pop star performing in a concert.
I understand your argument, but if you're a pop star, you're probably singing the track.
Okay, if you're Metallica, let's go there, right?
Sure.
Like you're Metallica.
What I'm saying is,
most pop stars don't even sing in concert anymore.
James, you're getting confused about something that's irrespective of the point. Okay, and you know it. You understand what I'm saying.
He's just obstructing.
So don't focus on the detail that has nothing to do with what we're trying to talk about.
Okay, what are you saying?
Focus on the sense of their vibe does change. Like their sets do change slightly based on the vibe of the room, their audience, the night, all the venue, all that kind of stuff affects their performance. And it's not just exactly the same every night what they practiced, right? Same thing with a 200-piece orchestra.
Sure. And you're saying the conductor makes it consistent.
No, I'm saying the conductor feels. Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
He leads the ship.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't have a problem with the conductor leading the ship. I have a problem with the conductor making himself the center of the performance. I don't think that's necessary. I think you could practice and not have the conductor the center of the performance.
I think that people go to hear both. They go to hear the orchestra play amazingly, and they go to see. I mean, like Bernstein was a celebrity of the conductor era. Von Karen, Boulez, these are all kind of celebrities. Michael Kamen.
Now you're talking my language. Watching 108 people play musical instruments, kind of boring. Watching a guy flail his arms all around, supposedly in charge of these 108 people, and also somebody you can put on the poster as opposed to the 108 people, somebody who you can make a celebrity. Seems like the purpose of a conductor more than necessity, in my opinion.
No, there is a extreme necessity there, but people also go to see the individual. It's both. It can be both. Two things can be true.
I believe what you're saying. I'm not saying that a conductor can't hold a note longer than what's on the page and all these types of things. Maybe even get 108 people to do it in real time. I'm just not sure it's necessary, I guess.
I think the only way to test this is to have James conduct a live performance and compare it to a previous night where a professional conducts it and see if they sound the same.
I mean, they probably just do it the way the other guy did it.
Yeah. Tell the musicians, just play your best. Just kind of ignore James.
Right.
And then see how they compare.
Their professionalism would probably click in. Most people couldn't even tell the difference. I'm willing to bet.
I used to do that in college. I was in a brass ensemble, and we would play during a college event called the V&D's Ball, which is essentially like fancy prom for adults where people would dress up. There's waltzes and everything. And the faculty would attend this concert, and like my teacher would be conducting our ensemble, but then they would like if a music faculty walked by, the teacher would be like, "Oh, hey, come over. How about you conduct a piece with the band?" Right? And we knew, and our teacher even told us, he's like, whoever this guest conductor is, don't look at them. Like, you guys know the music in this sense, because they're just going to be waving their arms all differently. So there is
exactly.
But the difference, I'm not doing this to prove James's point. I'm doing to prove the point of you work with the conductor and you get to know what they do, what to expect from them. So yeah, you drop some rando on the stand there and they're waving their arms. You're like, okay, you know what? We're going to kind of follow this person, but we're also going to like listen to each other.
Sure. Okay, let's go back to Maestro. Zach was talking about the visuals. I agree. I think the visuals are probably one of the better things about the movie. It helps that like Matthew Lebatique is like the cinematographer of this, who did like Requiem of a Dream and like I think all the way from Pi to Mother.
No, yeah,
it's like what's his name? Cinematographer
Aronofsky
cinematographer. So that helps. And then also I heard on a podcast that this movie was once going to be directed by Martin Scorsese and also at once going to be directed by Steven Spielberg. What do you think the difference? Yeah. What do you think the difference would have been had either of them actually made this movie? Do you think it would have been more about Leonard Bernstein than, because this movie definitely gave me A Star Is Born vibes, where it's like Bradley Cooper doesn't necessarily want to tell the story that everybody wants him to tell. He just wants to talk. He wants characters that are complicated and not even show you like the high points of their life. Just show you like the second worst fight they've ever had type of thing. I don't know. It's like, it was kind of like a low key drama at times for me, which is the vibe I got from A Star Is Born. I don't know.
I liked A Star Is Born way better.
Really?
Unfortunately.
Than this.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I think Scorsese and Spielberg would spend much more time on the music just because they're more not contemporaries of Bernstein, but definitely were more alive as he was the most famous.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Bradley Cooper, was alive at the same time as Bernstein, but probably not as aware of what he was doing as people of that generation were.
I personally think a Spielberg version of this would be way worse.
Like sappier?
Yeah. Schmaltzy. Like this would play into the worst instincts of like a more modern Spielberg.
Sure. I could see that.
I
but
think
also
Scorsese would somehow get someone shot in the head in this movie.
Sure. Okay. Anything else with Maestro?
I don't know. You want to drag conductors anymore?
I liked
James?
all of it except the music.
Like you didn't like the music, or you didn't like
the music was great.
What?
It was Leonard Bernstein through the whole thing. Practically.
Let me get back on my high horse here. Have you listened to Candide?
I don't. I mean, you mentioned that track or that song. I don't know what you'd call it.
Make your garden grow. Make our garden grow.
Yeah. Right. I couldn't tell you what that was. We'll play it later, like off the podcast, because I'm curious to know if I would recognize it. But
oh no, you probably wouldn't recognize it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not a famous piece. It's just your favorite piece.
It's one of my favorite of his. It's a famous Bernstein piece, but if
it's from Candide.
Yeah, it's from a well-known. I mean, that's probably a famous American opera. But if you're not, if all those words opera Bernstein aren't in your musical taste, you're probably not gonna know those pieces.
Sure. It's a good chance I don't know it then.
Yeah. You've probably heard it other places before. This is probably not your first time hearing it. It probably just didn't register with you.
Gotcha. Do you know my favorite Leonard Bernstein thing he's ever done?
No. What?
No.
That Mountain Dew commercial with the snowboarders.
What?
Oh, yes, I remember that one. That was great.
I loved that one.
I don't think he did that. I think they just
no, but
music,
obviously, it couldn't have happened without him.
James, you don't remember this commercial?
I mean, I'm sure there were lots of snowboarding Mountain Dew commercials.
This was like late 90s. There's two snowboarders on like either end of a canyon with like, slopes.
Uh-huh.
And Tonight is playing from West Side Story.
West Side Story.
Yeah. No, tonight, the world is ours tonight. That one. Yeah, that's Smashing Pumpkins.
And
that
then they meet in the air and like dance in the air.
Right. And I think they like make a heart with their snow trails in the air or something.
Yeah, it's great.
And they're chugging Mountain Dew the whole time too. It's a cool it's a cool commercial.
It was a good commercial. Memorable. It played in theaters a lot.
I don't think I've seen this.
The Gap also did a bunch of Bernstein set commercials, like set to West Side Story in like their khaki era.
Their khaki.
Yeah, there was when the Gap was like all into khakis. So that was like the big thing in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be people like in one of those white infinity rooms in khakis dancing to like West Side Story songs. Like Bernstein had like this late 90s revival.
Weird. Was he dead by then?
Yeah, he died in 90.
So maybe his what do they call it? Estate was selling the rights to Mountain Dew
and the Gap.
Right.
Possibly, yes.
That's awful. You pass away, next thing you know, your music's being used in Mountain Dew commercials.
I mean, my Hawk's got to make some money,
I guess. All right. Anything else? Are we done with Maestro?
I don't know, James. Again, more hot takes.
I don't have any more. That's about as hot as I get, I would say.
Okay.
Leonard Bernstein wasted his life, clearly. All right. Let's letterbox Maestro. I gave it 4 stars.
I'm going to give it 3 stars.
Yeah, I'll give it 3 stars.
All right. As much as I think the conducting is silly, there wasn't a whole lot of it in this, so it was fine.
I mean, it's superfluous anyway, so why show it?
For sure. All right. 2 3s and a 4 for Maestro. This is like tangential, and then we'll move on. A lot of people are saying that the movie's bad because Bradley Cooper is clearly trying to win an Oscar with this. How do you guys feel about that statement?
I don't I don't know what trying to win an Oscar is, but like this is his own project. I mean, he's acting well. Is that what trying to win an Oscar is?
I guess. I mean, when do we penalize people for trying? You know what I mean? It seems, I don't know. Whenever I read that, and I've read it in more than one place, I was just kind of like, but did they watch the same movie I watched? Like, he seemed totally in place in that movie, not out of place. Didn't seem like too big a performance.
Right.
It seemed very appropriate.
I mean,
because of the time of release, or like, what is it about this movie that makes you feel like he's trying too hard?
I don't know. I think it's just a prestige picture. Like, so it's got a lot of the bones of an Oscar movie, but I don't think it's like it's not written by like an algorithm to be like, this is the perfect Oscar movie. Like, it's
right.
It's a prestige picture.
Yeah, I guess. Do you think it may be different? Would have been different if like Bradley Cooper was not simultaneously the voice of Rocket Raccoon? You know what I mean?
No,
like
I don't think so.
Like he's not considered a prestige actor. Probably the most serious he's ever been was in A Star Is Born.
What about American Sniper?
American Sniper came after Star Is Born. Sorry.
No, it was 2014.
Really? Was it before or after?
American Sniper was the same year as Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right, but when was A Star Is Born?
2018.
Okay, so that came years after.
Yeah.
Okay. You think American Sniper, though, is as serious as, like, from a performance perspective, as A Star Is Born?
I mean, he's playing a tortured sniper during a war. I think it's a pretty serious role.
It's a seriouser role. I agree.
Yeah.
Seriouser than All About Steve and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, he definitely was doing like rom-coms and Wedding Crashers and Wet Hot American Summer.
That was 10 years ago. He's, since then he's done like Silver's Lining Playbook and American Sniper and Star Is Born, and people see him as a director matured as much as an actor now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a good point. Silver Linings Playbook. That was that was like a big prestige role for him.
I don't think he has anything to prove at this point. I think people take him seriously.
I agree. I didn't feel like he was trying too hard to win an Oscar. I don't think he'll win one.
I don't think he'll win. I think Carey Mulligan might. Like, that was a strong performance.
I think Carey Mulligan will definitely get a nomination. I'd be surprised if she didn't. I think the cinematography is going to get a nomination, and I hope Sarah Silverman gets a nomination.
Oh, that's right. I forgot
she was great in this. I was like, they should put her in more movies that you wouldn't expect Sarah Silverman to pop up in.
Yeah, it was a surprise.
She pops
appearance.
up in things every now and then.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for listening to this episode 616 of the Cinereelists. We appreciate your listenership. Don't forget, there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out there. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. We'd appreciate that. Leave us an Apple Podcast review, 4 stars only, or send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com, REEL with an S on the end. And just to remind you, send us your top 10 movies of 2023 via email, heyguys@cinereelists.com. There's a link in the description of this podcast on YouTube and your podcast app. Just fire us an email with your 10 favorite movies ranked in order, if possible. And we'll get them included in the listener aggregate for this season's Hangover episode. Also, you can follow us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Cinereelists, or you can follow me on my personal Twitter or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You follow me on Twitter or Letterboxd at Shaban.
Find me on Letterboxd at Peter SKB.
Next week, we will be doing our top 20 films of 2023. So don't miss it. Find out what we liked, what we didn't like in one short week. We'll see you there. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.